We are Masters Radio, an online music community finding ways to enjoy and support the master artists who created the soundtracks to our lives. We can show that musicians on our platform will benefit from increased exposure, engagement, healthcare, and other benefits, fundraising, and growth opportunities that empower them to thrive. And today, continuing what seems like at least 4 or 5 in a row, great guitar interviews. We have Dustin Douglas of Dustin Douglas and the Electric Gentleman joining us today. So thank you for joining us.
Hey, Adam, thank you for having me, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you began playing guitar at like 13, right?
Yeah, I mean, even before that, I mean, I believe I started taking lessons right around that time, 12, 13. But even before that, there was always guitars around in the house, toy ones, old ones, from pawn shops at my grandparents' house. So there was always guitars around. But officially like started kind of taking lessons for a few years around 13.
Cool. All right. So right there within the house, there was things that influenced you, the musical instruments that you could play with. Tell me about what's going on in Wilkes-Barre because it seems to be a cool place to have grown up and make music. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been, there's something magical about a small town music scene. There's a lot of great bands, a lot of great musicians. It's kind of close knit, which is cool. A lot of musicians sharing members to get the job done. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not as many clubs as there used to be, but I think that's not just this town, but it's every town. I think, but where there's a will, there's a way. You know.
Indeed, there must be enough because I looked at your tour schedule and it seems like you're doing all around Pennsylvania. You're getting out of the state maybe a couple of times, but there's enough work there, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, between solo acoustic shows and the band plays a handful of stuff still in this area, but we are definitely concentrating on the touring out of state and just getting the word out there around the country.
Very good, very good. So, obviously you're a new group, you're a relatively new group, and you got a new album for coming out June 6th, so tomorrow, right? No, day after tomorrow.
Yep, 2 days.
And but you harken back to an old sound, to a blues rock sound. I hear Led Zeppelin, I hear AC/DC, and I hear some Cream trio. Um, Tell me about how you managed being true to the old sound, but putting a new kind of a modern spin on it. When I hear Broken or Damaged or the newest single, A Dangerous Game, these videos, they call them singles, but the videos, there's definitely a fresh sound there. But how do you balance that with trying to be true to the old school?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, it's that that equation comes very natural to me. I mean, the way that I write, the way that I think, my heart and my love of the classic rock is instilled. It always starts there. But, I'm no stranger to I love modern music, whether it's modern hard rock, whether it's modern, some metal, some, pop, some any of the modern. I definitely don't um I'm not a ticket buyer for the keeping everything retro. I do like a modern sound. I think I like modern sonics. So I do love to blend that. I think our bio kind of says like, classic vibe for modern ears kind of thing. And that's really the truth. I like to keep my foot in the old school, but I definitely am intrigued by new school things.
On that note, the modern ear, who are those people that are coming to your shows? Because if you look at the musical landscape, either radio in the car, television shows about who's going to be the best singer, etc., there's not a lot of
Right.
exposure to new music in the blues rock, hard rock kind of genre. Who?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something you have to work towards. Um, there's people that say there's not great music out there anymore, but there is. You just have to search for it a little harder. It's definitely not as mainstream as it. There is certainly a lot of artists that are breaking through, and that's obviously our goal would be to bring it to the masses. And bands like the Black Keys and Jack White are kind of taking it to the new level where they're doing exactly what we're doing, where it's keeping the old school, but bringing it to the new. What's great as far as the crowd's concerned, like you said, is like um, a lot of oftentimes, and I noticed that there'll be a father, of the boomer generation, which makes up a lot of our fans, and because that's the demographic of the old school stuff. But they'll be with their sons or their daughters who are, they're kind of they come to the shows together, and that's really cool because that is what we exemplify, which is the old school and the new school. So that's that makes me very happy when I look out in the crowd and I see that, the multiple generations of family members coming to a rock show.
It's funny you say that because almost the exact, pretty much word for word sentence came out of Lawrence Gowan of Styx. And there's no way in the world you could confuse anything Styx plays with anything you play. They're entirely different kinds of music. And yet, the point of it is good music transcends generations.
Yes.
And the parents, the boomers, they bring their kids because they say, I loved this when I was your age, and I think you will too. And
yes.
It's true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate that I hate to even use the word boomer because it somehow has gotten this negative connotation in the press. But for me, it's like that's the people that get it, get what we do because they listen to AC/DC and they listen to Bad Company and they listen to Zeppelin and hell, the more boomers, the better for me.
Yeah.
I welcome them.
And by the way, now we have all the money. So, there's that. Yeah. But we're now old enough that we have all the money to buy records.
You say, I'm glad you said it. That's very true. That's very true. Very true.
Obviously, you've gone in a couple of different ways in your career. I was a huge fan of the Badleys. I'm a keyboard player and harmonica player myself, and the Badleys was an album that did harmonica on a record that really was refreshing because it wasn't just blues, which is what everybody thinks of when they think of harmonica. I'll walk in and say, well, what blues songs? And I go, you don't have to play a blues song, be a harmonica. I love that the Badleys really did that. And then the other thing, but you eventually turned into, you were a trio, then there was a Badleys, and now you're a trio again. What is the magic about trios? Because there's a lot of it. Like I mentioned Cream earlier. What is it about being in a band with just three? This seems to make such a big noise.
Yeah, I mean, for me, my first band ever was a power trio, and then by that it's happenstance. There just happens to be just three of us that want to be in a band, and then my playing has kind of gravitated towards filling that space, and that's I will be honest now, we have added a fourth guy for live, which, mostly because I really wanted to have some backing vocals, the new tracks, and I wanted to, the songs deserve the justice, so we do have an additional guitar player. My great friend John Novak has joined on for some live shows, but it's still the spirit of the trio, and that's just how I write. That's just how I think, which is nice when you do add a fourth member because then it kind of just makes it that much more bigger and beefier, and I get to kind of do less. That said, it's like, adding a fourth member is like my retirement plan. I don't have to do it all, but the way that my mind works, I love doing the rhythm and the lead and there's something really cool about a trio. And then, it's just the bands that I came up on, whether it's, SRV or, the Hendrix Experience. And I mean, even Zeppelin, but the band itself was, three guys for the lead singer. So that just always felt natural to me. Um, so being in the Badleys for the 10 years that I was, when I got back together, it was, I did, you said like the harmonica, like they brought that from a roots perspective, more of like the band, that, and I took a lot of that, the songwriting from that, and a two guitar thing, and just being in a band of five members rather than three. So it was like, it's nice to, I like to dabble in all of that. I would love to play in a band with a horn section someday and backup singers, or yeah, there's nothing off limits, but I do know I like having the confidence that I know that I could get it done with three guys too, you know.
Yeah, it certainly makes logistics easier. Yeah.
This day and age, I mean, there's bands out there. I just found out, I was talking to some friends in the industry that are, there's some up and coming bands coming out of Nashville that aren't even touring with a bass player. They're just rolling bass track because logistically and financially it's wild times. But yeah, if you could make it happen with three guys, you can make it happen.
And so many have. You mentioned a couple of them. I mentioned Cream. Those the Triumph, Rush.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Trios. It was just it almost seemed as if the bigger the band got, the less space they filled. It was sort of a weird inverse equation there for so many of those years growing up.
Absolutely.
So there's something to it, and part of it is, of course, being able to play and sing. All right, you got Winery Dogs is another great example where you got Richie playing,
Yes.
and so there's a bass player they'll never leave behind in that who's been on our show. But yeah, there's just something about that flexibility, and I'm sure I'm going to ask you to clarify for me, but I'm sure that being the guy who has to play it and sing it, how does that impact your writing? And as you said, you take up a lot of space with that. What do the other members, your drummer and bass player, was it Tommy and Matt? How do they fold into the writing process that became, for example, fourth in your record?
Yeah. I mean, being our fourth record, we've kind of fallen into our ways. Now, the one thing about being in a three-piece is you certainly cannot just put any rhythm section behind me and it's going to work, because for as important as the notes that you and the of what you have to play, it's almost important of what you're not playing. Everybody kind of has their space. So that comes with time, and that comes with jamming. That you just have to play. You got to play a lot of gigs, and you got to woodshed, and you got to spend a lot of time. But that's what makes my rhythm section, Matt and Tommy, just so great. And what makes this band so special is that it works, and it works with zero thought. We just really know what we have to do. Matt comes from more of like a jam band type world, so he comes from that. So our influences vary, but when it comes together, it's the Electric Gentleman, and it's kind of unique in its way. It's similar to some things, but definitely stands out and feels. I would rather it feel unique than sound unique. That's important.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, because it obviously the sound is a sound that's been around a long time, and you
Sure.
not at all shy about paying homage to what has come before, with a modern flair for the sonics, the pure acoustic delight of modern instrumentation versus the old JCMs, 40 years ago.
Right.
Just you had to turn them up to 12 to get them to sound all good at all, But it's so, and hell on your ears. Side note: I went to a LA gun show about May 1st. Okay, and I'm
Awesome.
15 feet in front of Tracy's stack, Marshall's customized head,
Oh yeah.
412s, four of them, and they're still ringing. It
Oh yeah.
hurt 3 days, and they're still ringing. I don't know how he does it because he's around our age, and around my age, and I don't know how he still does it. But anyway, um, so it
Yeah,
is.
man. I mean, he's keeping it alive because I mean, more and more, the stage sound is getting less and less. So I give him credit for holding on to that tradition, man, because there's nothing like it. But yeah, even myself, I kind of went down wattage wise, and I just got tired of getting yelled at by sound guys. Not trying
All
to
the other guys in the
start my
band.
day. Yeah, right. Fortunately, my guys, we're definitely not the quietest band in the world, and but yeah, more power to them, man. More is more.
Oh God, yeah, but I was just like, that's just crazy. But anyway,
No,
but the point is that you're able to find space for each other. It makes perfect sense that Paul from a jazz band, a great bass player, because if he needs to fill space, and that can happen, particularly like in between, you're taking a breath in between singing lyrics, a little bass run there makes some sense, and you hear that a lot.
absolutely, man. It's not, again, it's not something that can happen between a random three musicians. You know when something special like connection happens between three musicians, then it can work. Um, it's just the woodshedding process. It's getting in the room together and making it happen, and that takes time and patience and some luck, you know. But when it does work, there's nothing better, man.
And if you do enough time, the patience and the luck come along. Um,
Absolutely. Put the work in early, put the work in early, and you'll have a you'll have a great band for the rest of your life.
Absolutely true, and I've heard that so often from other people that I've had on the other side of this display, before.
Sure.
It's all about the time. I mean, great couples always say they finish each other's sentences. Great bands finish each other's musical sentences.
Absolutely.
It just fits, and I'm glad that you see that you could change out as you put it a rhythm section, and yet you can write for those guys and they'll respond to it and they can bring in their part of it as well, because often, and that does happen a bit with trios. Cream, great example of it, is he pretty much had one dominant writer, and and he pretty much said how this is how the thing is going to go.
Sure. Yes.
I know you write pretty much everything, but they help, right? Just arrange.
Yeah. So I mean, um, I'll write, the riffs and the lyrics and the overall feel. Sometimes things are a little bit more sussed out where I know what I want. But my guys, that's how we work, and that's how we've always worked, and they know and they trust my vision. Um, and the best thing to do is to surround yourself with musicians that are almost better than you or can challenge you, because that's where the best stuff comes out. So man, I'll throw a rhythm idea at Tommy that may not be super comfortable for him, and he sits with it and ends up loving to learn it. But you have to trust each other, and you got to leave the ego at the door, because then things do not work out for the best. And fortunately, we have none of that. Um, Maybe they'd beg to differ.
Down to there, I don't think you'd be thinking.
but
but
that's okay.
Creative
No,
differentiation is good. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So you need to. I always say being in a band is like being married to, in your case, three people. In my case, five. Because
totally.
it's like that. You're living with them. You're playing with them, and you got to learn to live with their idiosyncrasies, and they got to live with yours.
Absolutely, man. And again, it's I count my blessings every day that I have this this wonderful band who gets along. We're great friends, and yeah, man, it's not always the case, and I enjoy every second of making music with these cats, man. I really do.
It sounds like you guys pretty much from the same area, and you almost wouldn't grow up together. Sounds so cliche, but it's from what I see, it looks like you guys were pretty much all working in and around each other for a while, even before you
Yeah,
broke up.
yeah, we exactly. We've all been in the same scene. Nobody's really a transplant. We just were, circling around each other for years, and then finally, whatever it may be, the universe was just like, all right, well, let's put these three guys together through friends, through mutual friends, through a pickup gig, and through a recommendation, and then 11 years later, 4 records later, here, more gigs to count. Yeah, it's just a real blessing.
It certainly sounds like it, and they're not saying one's better than the other, although this one sounds like it might be better because you get your friends as well as good musicians. But bands do go out there and they just pull from whoever's not working, put something together,
Sure,
do it right, put together an album. It makes perfect sense. This is a business, and you hire and you fire to make a business objective happen. So there's nothing wrong with that.
absolutely.
To have it be something so organic also sounds kind of cliche, but you guys grew up, can't be more organic than that, in the same scene, sort of drinking the same water. And,
Yeah,
it's kind of cool the way that it, like you said, you bounced around a bit, but came back to it 11 years ago. Now you're making some incredible.
absolutely. Thank you, man. And Tom Petty has a great quote in one of his documentaries where he's like, "If you want a great band, go back home." Because like that's really where it's. And I remember hearing him say that, and I was like, man, like I totally get what he's saying, because when you get back into the garage or the shed and you just woodshed, that's where great bands come from. A great band. Of course, there's situations of there's amazing session players and amazing session artists, and I do some of that work too, and I get that. But if you want a great band, go back home, find some dudes, put in the sweat, and that's that really reigns true.
He had the luxury of going back home, meaning Jacksonville, which gave us
Yeah,
Skinner, 38 Special, Shinedown.
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
talk about something in the water.
exactly.
Yeah.
you got that right.
Yeah, try that in Oklahoma City. Yeah. So,
Exactly. Maybe goes to someone else's home.
right. Exactly. So, it certainly matters, where home is. But the main point, and you made it, which is that to be able to do this with friends that have that same passion, that like probably grew up, and that's why I say it's so rare to find bands that have got wildly different ages in them. It happens, there are particularly some of the old
Hmm.
bands that we interview. There's some young players that have brought in to replace people who have retired, and
Yes,
20 years younger. Three Dog Night's my favorite example with one original member. The
right.
young guy is the bass player, with the founder Danny's son. So,
Oh
it's kind of a
yeah,
father and
man.
son business. The same with Van Halen and the Eagles and everything else. They brought
Right.
their kids into the game, right?
You
But
see a
there's
lot
something
of it
about
out there.
where
Yeah.
you're all in the same background seems to matter. The music marinates in that, and when it comes out, it's just so much more well done than if it's together, even by great players, right? It just doesn't
Right.
quite have the magic that it has when it's sort of brewed. Mixing my metaphors here between cooking and brewing. Um, I think you get it. So, all right. So, you're doing some shows in the Pennsylvania area. Any plans to go? Again, I think Kentucky and Indiana. I think I saw. But any plans to join somebody and do something a bit broader?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of things in the works, the main thing obviously was just getting this record out, which comes out, yeah, this Friday, days away, June 6th. But yeah, there's a lot of talks, a lot of great things happening behind the scenes, for fall. And yeah, we have Kentucky next week. We're doing a festival out there. Then we have our CD release show we're going to do here in town at a club called River Street Jazz Cafe. That's on the 27th of June. We're doing Music Fest back in Bethlehem. That's coming up. I know, the full schedule is obviously on the website, dustindouglasmusic.com. But man, a lot of great things. Stay tuned. Yeah, there's a lot of things in the works that I'm really excited about. So yeah, stay
We will have
tuned.
links in the show notes to the website where you can both see this tour schedule, read more about the Electric Gentleman, and also buy their merchandise, and they're including the record. Um, what have we not talked about that you would like fans to know?
Man, this was great. Actually, I really appreciate you having me. Man, that was a good one. I love talking about the band. Obviously, the band doesn't get as much love as I'd being the face and the thing. But man, without them, I don't know what I would do. It would not be the same. But other than that, man, just follow us out there. All the socials. The Instagrams, the Facebooks, the YouTubes. All those numbers, unfortunately matter. The iTunes and the Spotify's, and yeah, follow along. There's a lot of this. This is really cliche to say, but man, this is really just the beginning. And 4 records in, I feel like it's almost like, we're just getting our stride. So uh, hopefully I'll come up with a better title for the 5th one other than 5.
Yeah, see, it's very original for, but then again, one of your big influences, Led Zeppelin, and they didn't name anything.
Exactly. It was certainly an homage
Yep,
to the
yep.
Zeppelin 4 thing. Yeah, and it was definitely and then sometimes the titles you're coming up with, man, just like, this ain't gonna work. This isn't cool. So let's just tip our hats to the masters. But yeah, man, I'm really excited to share this with the world. And a few days, it's no longer just ours; it's everybody's, and that's really special about putting a record out. And
Finally becomes
yeah,
out there, and it gets a life of its own. It's like turning your kid out into
yeah,
the world, right? Yeah,
exactly. It's no longer mine. The songs take on other meanings for other people, and it's really cool. And I'm just happy that anybody, whether it's 2 people or 2,000 or 2 million people, just are listening to music that still has guitar solos in it. You
yeah.
know, and that's
It's
that's that that makes it all worth it.
loud as they may be, and as painful as they may be for weeks. So,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
I do still love it. Folks, we have been speaking with Dustin Douglas of Dustin Douglas and the Electric Gentleman, and their album 4 comes out June 6th, and it is a fantastic record. I've given it a thorough listen. You're going to love it if you love blues rock, if you love good hard rock, and the idea of a great playing trio. So please do check into it. And Dustin, I want to thank you for speaking with us today.
Oh, Adam, it means the world to me. Thank you so much for taking the time, brother.